All right, we are here at the Cleveland Museum of Natural History with Michelle Leighty, our resident coyote expert. So, what is actually your title here at the museum?
Sure. So I am the manager of our Perkins Wildlife Center,
Okay.
and that isn't limited to just coyotes. It's all sorts of different species of native Ohio wildlife.
Yeah, we just got a chance to walk through it, and it's an amazing facility for those of you who haven't seen it, or if people are visiting the Cleveland area. What I was really impressed with was, like we talked about, the animals seem to have more freedom of movement than the people do, which is totally opposite than most of your zoos.
Right. So this is actually probably my favorite part of the Wildlife Center is the overhead trailways, which our animals can use. It's connected to a whole bunch of the exhibits, and when we open a door, a different animal can use it each day. So our bobcats can use it, our raccoons can use it, gray fox, red fox, and our coyotes. And they're able to leave their exhibit and walk around above the wildlife center, above the visitors, and kind of check out what's going on in other places and actually sort of get out of the box.
Yeah.
And it's really great for visitors too because they can see these animals from a different perspective. You usually don't see a bobcat over your head, and this is a safe way to do that.
Sure. Where are the bobcats located? Are those most southern part of the state? Or?
Yeah. So we do have a healthy bobcat population in the state. It's recovering. The numbers were pretty low for a while there, but
Hunting or just
more like habitat loss, maybe some hunting, trapping, that sort of thing. But they are making a comeback. I would say most of them are in the southern part of the state, but we have had sightings up in this area, Cuyahoga Valley National Park. There's a lot of camera trap sort of surveying going on right now to get a better understanding of the population. So, but yeah, they are here in Ohio.
It seems to me with the amount of deer that we have in this country, in this area especially, that it seems like it would be a good time for predators to start making a comeback. You start hearing things like more coyotes, more bobcats, mountain lions, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So bobcats and coyotes typically aren't large enough to go after adult deer, though they could. Coyotes in particular can prey on the fawns, and so you might not make a huge dent in the adult population, but we could certainly slow down the how many are surviving, if we have more coyotes, for sure. And there's actually some studies, I believe it's the Cleveland Metro Parks that are actually studying that exact topic.
It's interesting because one of my pet peeves is, and I'm an advocate of hunting. I'm a meat eater. I think it's important to know where your meat comes from. I don't have the skill level that I could go out and hunt deer successfully and humanely. So, but what I do is during the winter I will basically hire someone to do it for me. If they don't eat the meat, I'll eat the meat for them. I think it's important to know where your meat comes from, and that's at least those animals have lived a healthy, fun life. They've gotten to mate, they've gotten to live and live in there.
And like you said, there's too many of them.
Right.
Probably, I would agree that being humanely hunted is a better end than being hit by a car and suffering or something like that, or having no food to eat, that sort of thing.
But like you said, the coyotes aren't necessarily. I get one of the pet peeves I get is hunters indiscriminately killing coyotes because they're hurting the deer populations, which seems to me not really happening.
Right. I think coyotes just have a bad reputation in general. They're a misunderstood species and disliked probably for a lot of reasons. They back from mythology and folklore, they've always been sort of portrayed as a trickster or a cunning kind of, or evil, that sort of thing. And then, Coyotes haven't always been in Ohio. They started out more as, out west, a lot more common.
They were a prairie species.
Yeah, so they did prefer, sort of prairies and deserts and that open sort of area, but a lot of people would have livestock, and so people, just started shooting coyotes, and they're just kind of generally disliked.
Yeah.
A part of it's just that they're really smart too, and they outsmart us. They get through fences. People get frustrated with them. They're very adaptable. They have expanded their range and the kind of habitat they can live in. They can live in pretty much anything. So it's not just deserts and prairies anymore. It's suburbs, it's forests, it's cities, downtown, the downtowns of huge cities, parks, golf courses, farmlands. I mean, they can do it all. So
do we have a population in downtown Cleveland? Do you know?
So that's being studied right now. We're trying to get a better understanding of exactly what's going on. There are definitely coyotes in the city, and especially in the suburbs around Cleveland. There have been spottings of coyotes in the downtown area. I don't know exactly how many are staying there.
They're hard to identify sometimes between a dog and a coyote too. When you first see them, first thing you think is dog, not coyote.
If you see them at a glance, they can look like and often a glance is like all you're going to get with a coyote. Right. And they can look like a small German Shepherd or another dog, for sure. So I think if you see a coyote, you're actually kind of lucky, because they don't really like to be seen, and they do tend to avoid people.
Yeah.
So that's why it's part of why it's so hard to understand what exactly is going on. Because for every coyote you see, there's probably a whole bunch that you're not seeing.
Right.
And they're very smart. They're very secretive. So.
Have you read the book Coyote America by
I have.
Yeah,
Isn't that fantastic? I have. Yeah.
There were some things in there that struck me, and that I've tried to talk to people who hunt coyotes about is the thing that amazed me most was the fact that it seems if you shoot a coyote, the females automatically come back into heat and will have larger litters.
Okay, so coyotes can adjust their litter size based on the population around them and also the availability of food. And so if people just try to shoot or remove a bunch of coyotes from the area, you're not going to decrease the population, because other coyotes will immediately move in, because there's suddenly this open territory with all this food. And with all that food and no other coyotes around, a typical litter size is maybe 5 or 6 animals, but when they can exploit all that food and territory, they could have litter sizes of 10 or 11, and they can, the opposite's true too. If they're in a really packed area, small territory, not that much food, maybe they'll only have 1 or 2 pups in their litter.
See, that's what amazes me about these animals. And I remember reading in the book that when they put the bounties out on wolves and coyotes in the Great Plains, they would kill 40,000 wolves and 40,000 coyotes one year. The next year they might only kill 20,000 wolves, but they kill another 40,000 coyotes because they just kept breeding. And controlling coyotes' population size that way is just not going to work. And we're losing. I mean, there's no way we're going to. Bait traps don't seem to work, and they were doing some horrible bait poisons of coyotes on the Great Plains, and it seemed like politicians were behind it because of all the money coming in from ranchers, but again, are we dealing with a coyote? It doesn't seem to me, if they're not taking down deer, they're certainly not taking down cattle, but I guess maybe calves and chickens and that kind of thing.
I mean, sure, coyotes could potentially eat chickens, which a lot of people do keep these days. And if you want to keep chickens in your yard, you just have to have a coyote-proof fence.
Right,
and you really have to make that investment. Coyotes, they're probably not eating adult deer, but they certainly are eating fawns.
What's a general diet? I mean, you were talking about it outside.
So, in the wild, and we try to feed, so we have 4 coyotes that live here, and we feed close to a wild diet here. They eat a lot of rodents, small mammals, rabbits, groundhogs. Occasionally, they'll eat amphibians or stuff like small reptiles if they can get their jaws around that. Birds. And they're not true carnivores. They are omnivorous, so they will eat a lot of fruit, berries, eggs, vegetation, vegetables if they can get their jaws around that too. So they're yeah.
Survivors.
They also will scavenge. They'll eat a roadkill deer. They'll eat dead stuff too.
Yeah, we were talking about being in Virginia. It was 2 weeks ago, and just sitting out on the front porch of our resort one night, and you could hear them. I don't know what they're doing. It was just like several of them, kind of like they were doing out there, that cackling.
Yeah.
I don't know if they had found something dead, or if they were calling each other, or what.
They're very vocal animals.
Yeah.
They have all sorts of different barks and yips and chuffs and woofs and howls, and they can do it for a number of things, a number of reasons, primarily to communicate. Sometimes when they just erupt into a big howling session, it's just for fun. They typically, I don't think they would usually howl when they make a kill, because that's just gonna bring in right. They don't really want to share, but yeah, they are very vocal and they communicate with each other.
Now, I had read that they are kind of pack animals, but also solitary.
So they're not pack animals the way a wolf would be, where they live in these huge packs. They mostly are going to form pairs, and they form very strong pair bonds. They typically are monogamous and will mate for life until one of the pair passes. And then when they raise their young, they'll function as a family unit. But sometimes, if the young might stick around for a couple years or whatever, and so they would function, sort of as a small group, but they don't form these huge packs the way wolves do.
Right. Yeah, that's really interesting. I didn't realize that they were monogamous and stayed together. So we're talking multiple litters over the years. That's amazing.
Yeah. So the lifespan of a coyote in the wild, maybe about 4 or 5, though in captivity, they'll live to be 12 to 15 or so. There's, Stan Garrett. Dr. Stan Garrett is a researcher who's from Ohio State, but he's been doing this huge research project in the city of Chicago.
Urban Coyote Project, right?
Yeah, and he, one of his animals, he said was 11 years old, or maybe even 12, and that was a wild coyote. So they can live, similar to like a domestic dog lifespan, but they tend to not live as long in the wild as they would in captivity. Just in captivity we have too. Our coyotes are probably going to live a long time here at the museum because they have veterinary care, they get vaccinations, they have this very healthy diet that's disease free. They get great care, they have no stress, they have no predators, they're not going to get hit by cars, that sort of thing. So you can double or even triple the lifespan of an animal.
Talk a little bit about the coyotes you have here. So we just got a backstage, all access tour Michelle was nice enough to give us, and we could actually get, you were still behind the cage, but we were within, just 6 inches to a foot from these things. I was really impressed with, number one, like you talked about, how healthy they look and large as compared to the ones I've seen in the wild. But maybe you can talk a little bit about the 4 you have here.
Sure. So we have 3 related coyotes that live here. They are a sibling group. And then we have 1 unrelated female. The 3 siblings have a pretty amazing story. So here at our wildlife center, we take animals for our exhibits that cannot be released into the wild. So we're primarily getting animals from wildlife rehabbers and rescue centers, and the animal cannot live in the wild for whatever reason. Maybe it had an injury. A lot of our birds, for example, have wing injuries and aren't good flyers, or have eye injuries and wouldn't be good hunters. A lot of our mammals are orphans that, for whatever circumstances, came into captivity and were hand raised, and then maybe didn't get wild enough for release, became a little too human oriented. So for our 3 coyotes who are siblings, we actually got them from a Texas rehabber. One night, an adult female coyote was crossing a highway near Dallas, Texas, and she was hit by a car. The driver of the car, he had a background in biology, and he was the son of a veterinarian, so he was, familiar with animals. And he got out of the car just to check out the situation, see if maybe he could help the coyote in any way. And she was dead; she had been killed. But he also noticed she had a huge belly and could see movement, knew she was close to giving birth, and that if he did nothing, all the pups there would die too. So he took his knife out and just cut her open, did a C-section on the side of this Texas highway, and pulled out the pups. That's and amazing. All of them survived. They did go to a wildlife rehabber, and attempts were made to make them wild. They were put together with some other coyote pups who were going to be released, but these siblings just never really got to the point where they felt comfortable with releasing them. So they started contacting zoos and wildlife centers around the country to see if they could be placed in permanent homes. And so that's how we ended up getting them. I flew out to Texas and checked them out, and thought they would be a great addition for our new wildlife center. We have this huge new coyote exhibit, and so we ended up taking them, and they have really thrived here. And then our other coyote is she's a female from Michigan. She's a few years older. She was also orphaned. She was found in a den during a controlled burn, and she was with a sibling who did not survive the fire, but Charcoal is her name, and she recovered. She did have some burns on her body, mostly the back end of her and her tail. She had to be she was rescued from the den. Just she wasn't very old at all, so she was totally hand raised, way too human oriented to be released. And so we got her. She was actually the first coyote we got here, and then we added the Texas coyotes a couple years later.
It was amazing to me, and when you talk about them being human oriented, we walked in, and I'm sure because they're so used to you, yeah. All of a sudden we saw Charcoal first, and she was just following you the whole time. Her eyes never left you. She was so excited to see you. You could just tell. And then we went down and saw the other 3, and they were the same way. Then you went in to feed them, and they immediately jumped up. They have these podiums, and I'll put some pictures up. These podiums that they get on, and you're just sitting there throwing them mice, and you understand what they are. They're they're wild animals,
sure.
But the intelligence level there and the the amount of affection they had for you is yeah. I mean, they're putting their butts up against the cage for you to rub them, and it was amazing. And for a guy like me, it's you have to remind yourself that these are wild animals. You don't want to find a coyote puppy and raise them in your home.
Definitely not.
Do you get people who have tried this before? And
well, I don't know if I can't say I've ever met anyone who tried to have a coyote as a pet. And we don't advocate doing that in any way. Our coyotes, I've been working at the museum since they've all known me the whole time, and I've done a lot of work to get to that level of a relationship with them. It's not even just, oh, this person brings me food, like I like them. I put in a lot of time to develop relationship with these coyotes, and like you said, they are very intelligent. We do a lot of training with them, so they're trained to go on those podiums. Right. Like you said, we call them their stations, and they're trained to do all sorts of stuff that helps us take care of them. Going into kennels, so we can take them to the vet, standing on scales so we can weigh them, doing tactile training so we can apply flea and tick medication or check them over for lumps and bumps and that sort of thing, look at their teeth, look in their ears and their nails. And with doing all that training, and spending all that time with them, it's really that develops a relationship. It's not just the food, though they like the food, of course, too. They are in the canine family.
Just like any dog,
And so, yeah, and it's nice for visitors to see that the coyotes have strong relationships with us, because a lot of people think coyotes are scary and, killers, and they're gonna attack them. And so it's nice for people to see that coyotes actually can be very friendly, and they're social, and they're playful, and they're affectionate. But at the same time, we are careful not to make people want to have one as a pet, because a coyote would never do well in someone's house as a pet.
Right.
They're just the diet alone, feeding that, you can't just feed them a bowl of dog food. They need, the mice, the rats, the rabbits, the variety. They need a lot of space. We have a ton of space here at the museum.
Yeah,
we don't keep them in a house. So and they are wild animals. Even though I can, interact with them the way I do, I'm always careful. I'm always watching their behavior.
Well, and so do you ever get weirded out? Because they're big. They, we got up on the fence to look at Erin, and Erin's 5'10", and you are not.
Yeah.
And it was looking her in the eye pretty much when it was on its back legs.
Yeah. They are big. I'm careful. Yeah. I have spent a lot of time around them. I'm good at reading their behavior. I've never felt unsafe with them, but if I ever saw something that made me feel uncomfortable, of course I would adjust how I am interacting with them. All of our exhibits here, we can shift the animals. We are totally capable of taking care of every animal here without actually going into the exhibit if need be. So, but with animals that are this friendly, this social, and if they're if this helps us take care of them, and having the strong relationship is important for them and the quality of their life, we're gonna use it.
Yeah, it's and do you do the same thing with Charcoal? Do you do the same feeding and stuff like that, where you go in and kind of throw her
the so Charcoal gets similar treatment. She also stands on her own station, even though there aren't other coyotes in there to, we feed the 3 on their stations so that they don't try to take each other's food and that sort of stuff. But we do the same with Charcoal. It's important for them to have, sort of a spot where they get their food. It's important for us too, because, we can always direct her to that spot if we need to. She's trained to go into her kennel as well. All the same sort of thing.
Yeah.
So she is actually a little bit moodier though than the other 3. She has very strong bonds with the staff here that have been here since she was a baby, but she actually doesn't really she doesn't have a bond with any newer staff who came on board more recently, and so most of them actually do the other method of care for her where they'll just shift her, because I don't think she would attack them or anything like that, but she's just a little bit more of an unpredictable coyote in general, and that's kind of how coyotes are.
She has her people.
Yeah, she's got her favorites, but she was hand raised by a rehabber, and she has very strong bonds with certain people, and just not with others. So.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, not just anyone could, have a coyote or work with a coyote. Well, you really have to put a lot of work into it.
I've got an Australian cattle dog, and right now that's I've always had them, but now it's becoming a breed that people are seeing other people have, and they want them. And I try to tell people that they're a fantastic dog, but it's a new breed. They were bred from blue marrow collies and dingoes, and there's still a lot of dingo in that dog.
Okay.
And so if you don't give them a lot to do, or if they get moody and bitchy, and they're very mouthy, and they take a lot of work. So I mean, I can understand, and they're brilliant. So, and you can see that in the coyotes that we were talking about, those eyes. There's something different when you look at that coyote's eyes, like they're figuring you out. Like there's definitely
they're very
some
intelligent. They're very aware of everything. I mean, the bright yellowness of the eyes too doesn't hurt.
Right?
But
that's amazing.
The way they hunt as well. They're canines. They do use their sense of smell for sure and their sense of hearing, but they're when they're actually hunting, they are a very visual predator.
They got that chipmunk when we were going in there. They were losing their minds.
Luckily, the chipmunk got out.
He got away.
But yeah, they'll stare you down.
Yeah. One of the things people talk about is them getting a hold of pets, and again, I read in that book that it seems to be that a lot of times when they kill a dog, it's more of a competing predator drive than it is that they're going to eat this animal.
So there's been a lot of studies looking at the digestive tracts and the scat and so on of coyotes and seeing what exactly they're eating. And pets really aren't much of a component of their diet, though, sure, occasionally they'll eat a cat if they have to, if they're hungry. But like you said, a lot of times coyotes will kill a cat or a small dog in its territory, and that's more of just getting that animal out of its territory. They also will become very protective in the springtime if they have a den. And so if, an off-leash dog wanders too close to some puppies, then, the coyote's going to protect its puppies. So they can attack pets in those sort of cases. But in general, they're not wandering around neighborhoods looking to eat dogs and cats. It's not something they're really interested in.
They're probably more interested in an easier meal too, right? I saw a guy recently on Facebook who posted a picture of what looked to me like a bull mastiff with what he claimed was coyote bites all over it. And I can't imagine the dogs we saw today attacking a dog that is as large as a bull mastiff.
Yeah, that would be very surprising to me.
And I think that's where we get a lot of this nonsense from people that, this must have been a coyote attack.
A lot of cats that got eaten by coyotes, that's just an assumption that an owner made when maybe its cat disappeared. That cat could have found another home, or got hit by a car, or killed by a raccoon. Who knows what could have happened to it, but it's always coyote ate my cat. And it's like, well, where's your proof? I'm sure it happens, but
that. And he said, if you find your animal dead, it was probably, or it might have been a coyote. He said, if you don't, these cats that just disappear, he was saying that there a lot of times are great horned owls or eagles or hawks, which we have plenty around here.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the cats go wandering around at night, and small cat would probably be a good meal for a nocturnal hunter like a great horned owl. Great horned owls take down skunks and stuff like that. So
like you always, there's a function to all these animals in society, with the ecosystem, and taking a predator like coyotes out. I mean, what do we deal with if we lose coyotes? Are we going to be overrun by rats? And
so exactly, coyotes eat a lot of rodents, and there have been studies where, particularly in like golf courses or neighborhoods, where they've removed the coyotes and then watched what happened, and immediately the rodent population explodes, and also the diversity of the rodent population goes down. So it's basically, some like large rodents are just going to take over, and
so now we don't have mice. We just have rats. So what you're saying?
Yeah, or just not as much of a diversity at any rate. The more powerful, sort of dominant rodents are what's going to take over. And coyotes are good for keeping those populations in check. In urban areas and suburban areas, Canada geese are another animal that is somewhat controlled by coyotes. They're not eating the adults as much, similar to the deer, but they will definitely eat the chicks and raid the nest for eggs. So that helps with keeping the Canada geese population from getting even more out of control than it already is.
Yeah, it really is. They're still everywhere.
Because they're adaptable too. They're like coyotes. They don't, they can live wherever. So
and they seem to be a little bit more aggressive than even the coyotes are. So many people have stories about being chased by a Canadian goose.
Coyotes tend to avoid the adults.
Yeah.
They'll go for the eggs and the babies.
So look, I had a story that I told a while back where I came home from the gym. It was like 7 in the morning. I live in the suburbs, little lake community, just about 30 miles west of Cleveland, right on Lake Erie. And we've kind of a stream that goes through our property right down to the lake. And I come home from the gym, and staring at the cats through my sliding glass front door is what I thought at the time was a big coyote until I saw yours. But he was just standing there, just looking at him. He wasn't trying to get in. I think he was just interested in what they were. And all three cats were just looking at him. And being 2018, I immediately started fumbling for my phone to get my camera out,
Yeah.
And he kind of looked at me and was like, okay. And then he just kind of slowly wandered off. He wasn't scared, but by the time I got out of my car to look where he went, he was totally disappeared.
Sure. Yeah, coyotes, they're curious for sure. They're smart animals, and they are very curious. So, but if you see one like that, I just feel like you're lucky. It's a nice,
right? Yeah.
It's a nice. It's always nice to catch a glimpse of one. They are shy. They don't like being around people, and they'll avoid people. They'll alter their schedules in urban areas so that they become a lot more nocturnal in cities and stuff, just to avoid people. But they are curious, like you say, and people do see them, especially in the spring, and during the winter too, during their mating season from about mid-February is the peak of it, but anywhere from January through March, they're a lot more active and hormonal, and they'll be out and about looking for mates, and so you do see them a lot more those time of year too.
Any tips on what you should do if you do see one? I mean,
so if you see one from a distance, just enjoy it.
Right.
If you see one that you feel threatened by, maybe the first thing you should do is not run, because that could trigger sort of a predatory response in the coyote. The best thing you can do is make some loud noises, clap your hands, wave your arms around. If you have a coat, kind of make your coat into a cape and flap it around. The coyote's probably going to take off. It's going to be terrified by that. They are shy. They might want to just get a look at you, and if you look scary, they're going to take off.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. It's amazing to me that we could live in these urban areas and still have this predator among us and in our societies and doing well and adapting and finding new ways to feed itself and breed and staying out of our traps and away from our guns. And like you said, I think you're lucky when you get to see them. And I really, really love what you've got going here with the coyotes. And
Thank you.
I mean, would you be willing to take more? Are you looking to expand at all, or?
Well, so our wildlife center's pretty new as it is. Mm-hmm. It's less than 2 years old.
I didn't even know it was here, and we've been here several times.
So we've always had animals, and we did have our old wildlife center, which was a little smaller, and this new one was the part of the first phase of the museum's big renovation that we have going on now, our sort of transformation project, and it opened almost 2 years ago on Labor Day weekend. And so I don't think we would be looking to actually expand the exhibit size in any way, because it's already huge. I feel like the exhibit space we have now is a good size for the number of animals we have now.
It really is.
And adding more, I don't see us doing that anytime soon, just because we have such a good thing going, and it's like the perfect amount of space for them, and we have a really good dynamic in our little group here. So and our coyotes are relatively young. The three siblings, Red, Tex, and Ember, they're 3 years old, and then Charcoal, she's 6 years old. So they've still got long lives to live here, and our visitors know them. They all know their names. They all come and visit and check on them, see how they're doing, that sort of thing. They all have very different personalities. And so, people are pretty attached to them. So I think things won't change for a while.
Yeah, I'm really psyched to come back and see him again. I urge you to come check him out. I would love for people who have, especially if you have some kind of fear or bias against coyotes, which, like you talked about, we started off with coyotes in this country as this trickster deity but a very important deity for all the North American Indian tribes.
Mm-hmm.
And somewhere around the turn of the century, probably with ranchers and everything else, they became this evil entity. But I really urge you to come out and just check out Ember and Charcoal and Tex and Red and just kind of hang out and come see Michelle and visit the museum. This place in general is amazing, and I love bringing my family here. But come check out these coyotes and just get a feel for them, and you'll see these aren't giant dire wolves that are going to hunt you and your pets down and do horrible things to you. They're just another animal we're living with in our suburbs, and really beautiful animals. And I just want to thank you for letting us come out here today and do this. This has been fantastic.
It was definitely my pleasure, and thank you so much for inviting me to be on your podcast.
We'll do it again sometime.
Yeah,
I'd love to.
Yeah, sure.
Anytime you get anything going on, we'll come out and do another one. But
that sounds great.
All right. Thank you very much. This has been The Refined Savage.